A humble cattleman's simple mercy drew 1,000 Apaches to his doorstep at sunrise. Elias Warren had long believed the world was a place where a man survived only by keeping quiet and guarding whatever softness he had left. But everything shifted the moment he discovered the injured Apache child near the dry creek bed behind his worn-out ranch. Elias was a struggling rancher, barely managing to protect the few cattle still in his care. Yet something inside refused to abandon the young boy lying there with an arrow buried in his shoulder. The child's breathing was ragged, his face streaked with dust, but in his eyes burned the stubborn spark of someone still clinging to life. Elias lifted him with care, fully aware that sheltering an Apache could invite danger, especially with tempers flaring between settlers and tribes. Still, the way the boy gripped his sleeve made it impossible to turn away. He carried the child into his cabin, placed him on his own bed, and spent hours treating the wound with the scant medicine he possessed. The boy didn't speak at first, only tensing whenever Elias touched the torn flesh, but eventually he whispered his name, Coda. Elias nodded softly and told him he would survive if he remained still. Trust flickered briefly in the boy's eyes before exhaustion overtook him, and he slept while Elias kept watch through the long night, unsure whether sunrise would bring safety or peril. At dawn, Elias awoke to a faint rustling and found Coda struggling to sit up, reaching weakly for water. Elias steadied him, offered him a drink, then cooked a modest meal. The boy observed every gesture with guarded curiosity. When Elias passed him a bowl, Coda hesitated, then accepted with a quiet nod. For the first time, Elias glimpsed gratitude in the child's gaze, warming him more than any payment ever could. Throughout the day, Coda gradually eased, and by evening he shared broken pieces of what had befallen him. His voice trembled as the memories returned slowly that Coda's hunting group had been ambushed by a band of renegade outlaws who preyed on both settlers and tribes alike. He had fled, but hadn't gotten far before collapsing from the loss of blood. Elias listened intently, aware that if those outlaws still lurked nearby, no one, Apache or settler, was truly safe. He tied his horse, double-checked the cabin door, and remained watchful. Coda drifted back to sleep, his breath steadier, his body beginning to mend. 3 days later, everything around the ranch changed forever. Elias stepped outside to draw water when the earth beneath him shivered faintly. He straightened, puzzled. Then he saw them. Shadows at first, then figures forming across the horizon. Hundreds of Apache riders. Their outlines stretched wide across the plains in a sweeping formation. Elias felt his breath lock in his chest. He had heard tales all his life about Apache warriors. Fearless, devoted, unstoppable when defending their people. But watching them arrive in such numbers, riding with clear intent, sent his heartbeat racing. They closed in without a word, row after row, encircling the ranch until the very ground seemed to shift with their arrival. Elias didn't reach for his gun. Doing so would be suicide. Instead, he stepped forward with his palms lifted, praying the honesty of his choices would be enough. The riders split apart. An older warrior with long braids and a solemn face dismounted. His gaze was sharp and heavy with the authority of a chief. Coda's father. Before Elias could speak, the cabin door creaked open behind him, and Coda limped out, gripping the frame for balance. The boy uttered a single phrase in Apache, voice unsteady yet sure. The leader turned toward Elias slowly, and the weight of that stare made Elias feel as though his entire life was being judged in that moment. After a long, still silence, Coda's father lowered his head once. The gesture was so unexpected Elias nearly lost his footing. The warriors relaxed their weapons, and the tension melted into a stillness that almost felt unreal. Coda was lifted onto his father's horse with the help of 2 riders. But before they departed, the Apache leader approached Elias, removed a beaded necklace from his own neck, and placed it gently into the rancher's hand. Elias didn't know its meaning, but the act carried a gravity he couldn't deny. The riders turned in unison and vanished across the plains, as silent as their arrival. Elias released a shaky breath, unaware that this moment was only the start of something far greater. That night, Elias sat beside his small fire, staring at the necklace while replaying the day's events. He wondered if he would ever see Coda again. When sleep finally claimed him, he pictured the boy safely reunited with his people. But neither Elias nor the nearby townsfolk could have imagined what was about to unfold. For while Elias thought the Apaches had departed out of simple gratitude, Kota's father had left carrying a solemn vow, and that vow would return an entire Apache nation to the rancher's modest land in a way no man in the territory had ever witnessed. 3 days later, Elias awoke to a sound that made his heart leap. The distant thunder of hooves, heavier and more powerful than ever before, filled the morning air, a sound so immense it swallowed the quiet entirely. He rushed outside, expecting perhaps a small scouting party or some unrelated riders. But what met his eyes froze him in place. Stretching across the plains from horizon to horizon, riders appeared in numbers so vast Elias could not begin to count them. This was no mere band, not even a hunting group. It was an entire force, warriors, chiefs, elders, and young riders. At least 1,000 Apaches rode in precise formation, banners and drums moving in harmony, their unity palpable across the land. Elias felt the weight of the moment, but struggled to comprehend why they had returned. He had done nothing deserving of such a response. The closest riders halted 10 yards from his porch, the ground trembling beneath their horses. Then they parted, forming a wide path down the center. Kota's father appeared once more, now clad in ceremonial attire adorned with feathers, bone carvings, and symbols. Elias didn't fully understand the meaning, but he instinctively bowed his respect. Beside him rode Kota, sitting tall, his wound fully bandaged and healing. The boy lifted a hand toward Elias, face alight with recognition. Kota's father dismounted, approaching Elias slowly, placing a hand on the rancher's shoulder. The gesture spoke volumes, and a translator stepped forward from the ranks to convey his words. The translator explained that Kota's father, known among his people as Chief Nayati, had called a council and recounted the tale of Elias's kindness. Despite poverty, despite having no duty to help, despite risking danger to his own land, Elias had saved the life of a child from a world unlike his own. Among Nayati's people, such deeds carried immense honor. Saving one life forged bonds that spanned families, tribes, and generations. Kota's survival preserved the integrity of their community, and by saving him, Elias had proven a heart worthy of deep respect. Before Elias could reply, the warriors around him lowered themselves from their horses in perfect unison, sweeping across the plains like a living wave. It was not a threat, it was recognition. Elias stood motionless, overwhelmed. The translator continued, "The chief and his people have returned at dawn to repay the debt of life with protection, support, and alliance." They were offering something settlers rarely received: trust. Kota stepped forward, holding a new necklace, far more intricate than the one Elias had been given before. He carefully placed it around Elias's neck, a symbol that the rancher was now regarded as a guardian and a friend of the tribe. Elias tried to speak, to protest that he did not deserve such honor, but emotion choked his voice. The Apaches did not arrive empty-handed. They brought food, buffalo meat, dried fruits, baskets, and tools. Horses, strong and disciplined, were offered, a gift rarely given to outsiders. They repaired Elias's fences, reinforced his barn, and even fixed portions of his house. Children trailed behind Kota, laughing as he proudly showed them the spot where he had healed. Women prepared meals and stacked firewood neatly by the cabin. Warriors patrolled the perimeter, ensuring that outlaws or hostile parties stayed far from the ranch. Elias walked among them in disbelief, feeling the loneliness he had carried for years dissolve into a sensation long forgotten: belonging. As the day passed, Kota remained at his side, communicating through gestures, smiles, and a few English words he had picked up. Elias discovered the boy's curious mind and honest nature. When Kota demonstrated how to read tracks in the earth, Elias listened intently, impressed by the child's sharp instincts. Observing them, Kota's father showed a rare softness in his eyes, revealing the extraordinary nature of this bond. Later, the translator explained that Chief Nayati had lost family members in the past because settlers refused aid. Witnessing Elias's actions had restored something within him. That evening, as the sun slipped behind distant ridges, Chief Nayati gathered his people for a quiet ceremony. Elias was invited to stand beside him. A circle formed, and drums echoed across the plains. The ritual was not loud or aggressive. It was reverent, honoring Koda's survival and the man who had saved him. Elias felt humble beyond words. For the first time in years, he sensed that his life meant more than tending cattle and enduring hardship. When the ceremony ended, Nayati told him through the translator, "A man's wealth is not counted in cattle or gold, but by the strength of his heart. Today, you are not alone. You have 1,000 allies." The riders eventually prepared to leave, but not all at once. Groups departed gradually over the next 2 days, leaving behind signs of their visit. Mended fences, carved symbols of protection near the ranch posts, and gifts meant to endure. Koda stayed until the last moment, hugging Elias tightly before riding away with his father. Elias remained standing long after they had disappeared from sight. The land was quiet again, but his heart felt fuller than ever. He had lived all his life as a poor rancher. Yet his simple act of kindness had brought him something no wealth could buy: respect, connection, and a bond powerful enough to summon 1,000 Apaches to his doorstep at dawn.